Okay, and we are live. Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you on this beautiful Sunday. It is March 16, 2025. We are here. We are all of us together. We are so happy that during this very auspicious occasion, during this fast, as Baha'is around the world are refraining from eating and drinking from sunrise to sunset, we are so happy to have with us one of the contributors that we've had previously on Baha'i Explorations, Miss Bahia Naqshbani. And more importantly, I would like to just give a short introduction, as she's given a very pithy one. I'll just add one last thing to it. Miss Bahia Naqshbani is a reader, a writer, and lover of the English language. And for those of you who love reading, we welcome you to go to oceanlibrary.com, where you'll find a few of the Baha'i books that are not just available for your reading, but you can investigate more clearly when you're able to use a lot of the research tools that are available there. And further, should you wish, which I think most people who wish to read audiobooks, they would want to listen, you can also listen to Miss Bahia Naqshbani read a few of those books. And which ones they are, that's a surprise. When you investigate yourself, you'll find a lot of beautiful knowledge stored in all the holy writings of the various faiths that are found on the Ocean Library, Ocean 2.0 Interfaith Reader. With that being said, the topic today, it is the grounds of our beseeching. And the abstract for this is the discovery of the sunrise in words through an exploration of the structure of one of the prayers of the fast. So having said that, the fast, as we are as Baha'is right now going through this very important occasion, we welcome Ms. Bahia Naqshbani. And with that being said, do you need us to turn on the screen to share now? Yes? Okay, we have it ready. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really, it's an honor and a privilege to be with you. And before I really plunge into this absolutely wonderful prayer that you can see in front of you, I have to apologize for the colors that you'll see highlighting some of the words. In this event that we have together, I want to explore this prayer. And in order to do that, I want to make a few very obvious statements. One is that obviously, when you discuss and read a prayer together in the way I'm about to do it, it's a vast difference between the act of praying, which of course is what we should be doing when we read prayers. I am only going to be reading this prayer with you in an attempt to understand the structure of it. And the difference between analyzing the structure and praying is somewhat like the difference between climbing up a ladder and spending the time measuring the distance between each step of the ladder, looking at the two sides of the ladder, analyzing how far apart they are, and giving a spiel about the length of the ladder, and finally climbing all the way up only to come back down again. And to really, really pray, obviously, we use that marvelous ladder to go up to the rooftop, forget the ladder completely, and look up at the stars. So I hope that in the course of reading this prayer with you and looking at the structure of it with you, it will encourage you not just to read it and not just to analyze it, but through the structure and the analysis of the structure and the reading of it, to go up this wonderful ladder and see what Baha'u'llah wants us to look at through his words. You know, the concept of prayer as a ladder is a very ancient, ancient one. And you can find it in many, many religious cultures, of course. And I mean, we all know the story of Jacob, and this wonderful ladder, the archetypal ascent, that he has the dream where he sees the angels ascending and descending the ladder that takes him to God. And in Islam as well, we have the ladder, which is symbolized by Muhammad's night journey to heaven and the gifts of the 5 prayers that he was given then to give to the people for a ladder that they would be able to ascend in their prayers. Even in Japanese no theater, there's always, it's symbolized as a tree or just a vertical pole that is always on the stage as a kind of intermediary instrument of ascent, if I could call it that, linking ascent and also a mediation between all that is up and unattainable and the world below, which is where we live as human beings. And of course, we all know that on the ringstone, the Baha'i ringstone, we have that central line, connecting the line between God and man, passing through the manifestations. All these symbols, which are collected in the idea of the ladder, I am using to really see how does that ladder of the prayer, how do we use the understanding of what that ladder is to really come to a closer sense of the meaning of the prayer. It's interesting that Baha'u'llah uses the idea of ladder for prayer and also for music. He calls music a ladder for the soul. And in this prayer in particular, we come as close as we can do to the idea of Baha'u'llah's words as a kind of musical form, because the structure of this prayer is really very like a piece of music. So let me just explain my foolish colors here and the title of this discussion with you. The grounds of our beseeching. Every one of these, if you notice, I've numbered them. We will go through them page by page. There are 3 of these pages, and you will see that each one of those, I'm going to call them stanzas or verses, which Baha'u'llah gives us in this beautiful prayer of the fast, I've numbered. So there are actually 14, if you like, rungs to our ladder. There are 14 verses or stanzas which always begin with the words, I beseech thee, O my God. I beseech thee, O my God. Now, the word beseech, of course, if we want to really think about its meaning, it's one of those words which means I pray, I implore, I supplicate, I plead, I beg. Think of all the different ways, but beseech has got a yearning to it as well. I beseech thee, O my God. You know, you can go back as far as 3,000 years before Christ and find pre-cuneiform versions of the language which have captured the concept of a king standing, or rather kneeling, with his hands in supplication, appealing to the God. This is something that is universal and has been eternal in human history, to stand and beseech our beloved, our source of all our creation. I beseech thee, O my God. After those words, in each one of these stanzas, we have the phrase that I have highlighted in yellow, if you can see that. The yellow words are in each stanza what I call the grounds of our beseeching. The grounds of our beseeching are the, if you like, the place where you stand in order to make your prayer, the terms on which you base your prayer. And in each one of these verses, it's by something. I beseech thee, O my God, by this, by that, by, and if you put this in human context, it's when in ancient times when you would make a vow or you would swear by all that is most precious to you. I swear by my father, by my mother, by all that is most dear to me. I beg you by the sun, by the moon. It's all of those concepts of what you are beseeching by, what you are begging by. Those are the grounds on which you make your prayer. So I beseech thee, O my God, by, and in the first stanza, by thy mighty sign. In each one of these stanzas, I have highlighted the grounds of our beseeching in yellow. And I will go through them and we will see a picture beginning to emerge. Let me just finish by talking of the structure and explain what the blue is that I've highlighted. Because after we've said, I beseech thee, after we have offered the grounds or called in the name of or by some symbol of our prayer, we then have what we're praying for. In other words, the object of our prayer, the aim of our prayer. And in each one of these stanzas, I've highlighted the aim of the prayer, of that particular verse of the prayer in blue. So if we just use the first one as an example, I beseech thee, O my God, by thy mighty sign and by the revelation of thy grace amongst men, to cast me not away from the gate of the city of thy presence. All the way through this prayer, we're asking for something. We beseech by something for something. And this is the structure that Baha'u'llah follows every single time. Out of the 14 verses that he gives us, he follows that 14 times. And it's very interesting to see, as I said, the picture that begins to emerge as we go through each one. Now, by the time you come to the end, we get the last part of this stanza is again something that is repeated 13 times out of 14. And that is very significant. And if you look at the words, you'll see they are the same every time. Thou seest me, O my God, holding to thy name the most holy, the most luminous, the most mighty, the most great, the most exalted, the most glorious, and clinging to the hem of the robe to which have clung all in this world and in the world to come. It becomes something of an incantation as we say this prayer. Each time we repeat exactly those words 13 times over through the 14 verses. So we have the same words, I beseech thee. We have a different grounds of beseeching each time. We ask for a different appeal for something each time, and then we return at the end to the same incantatory, thou seest me. That very briefly is the broad structure of this prayer. But let's look now, if you don't mind, let's look closely at this ladder of ours. Let's look at the first rung and then the second rung and so forth, and see what it is that what are the grounds each time. I'm going to take the first 4 of these stanzas and look first just at the yellow, if you don't mind. So we'll begin to see something emerging here. The first one, as we just have said, I beseech thee, O my God, by thy mighty sign and by the revelation of thy grace amongst men. Just hold that in your minds for a minute. I beseech thee by thy mighty sign and the revelation of thy grace amongst men. Now go to the second stanza. See what he says in that one. I beseech thee, O my God, by thy most sweet voice and by thy most exalted word. Do you notice how we go from a sign, a mighty sign, and a revelation of grace to a voice? It suddenly becomes embodied. This is not just an abstraction, a sign, a symbol, a hint, a clue, or even a revelation of grace that allows you even to speak. But you begin to hear. You hear the sweet voice, and the voice is uttering a most exalted word. Then we go to the third one. I beseech thee, O my God, by the splendor of thy luminous brow, and by the brightness of the light of thy countenance. Do you see how we've gone from a sign to a voice to a face? We're beginning to actually see the features of this luminous brow and the brightness of the light of thy countenance. Something is happening here, like progress, like an opening from sound to sight to recognition, because by the time we get to the third verse, it goes into something even more profound. From the voice to the luminous brow and the light of the countenance, we come to, I beseech thee, O my God, by thy hair which moveth across thy face, even as thy most exalted pen moveth across the pages of thy tablets, shedding the musk of hidden meanings over the kingdom of thy creation. Now, musk, of course, is perfume. We have a combination here of the blowing of the hair, which is almost coming through with the sweet voice and the exalted word. We see the face beneath the hair, and we are reminded with those black lines of hair of the writing across the page of Baha'u'llah's own words on the tablet that he is writing, the very words of the prayer we're reading, which remind us of the hair, which is crossing the face, which is across that brightness of the luminous brow, which we have recognized through that sweet voice and most exalted word. We're beginning to recognize the face, see the face that is so familiar, and we come then to the next stanza, if you don't mind going, Jeremiah, to that next one. It is because we have had the sign and we've seen the brow and the face and the hair and heard the voice that we now can utter his name. I beseech thee, O my God, by thy name, which thou hast made the King of names, by which all who are in heaven and all who are on earth have been enraptured. Before we go on, let's go back to the beginning again and see what are we asking for as we see the sign and hear the voice and recognize the face and smell the perfume of that beautiful hair and the words crossing the page and understand this is that name that thou hast made the King of names. With the very first stanza, we're asking for something very, very moving because it's in the negative form. We're not asking for something, we're asking for something not to happen. We are saying, I beseech thee, O my God, by thy mighty sign and by the revelation of thy grace amongst men, to cast me not away from the gate of the city of thy presence, and to disappoint not the hopes I have set on the manifestations of thy grace amidst thy creatures. Please don't cast me away. Don't disappoint me. I beseech you by your sign, don't cast me away. Don't shut the door on me. Then when we move to the second stanza, by thy most sweet voice we are beseeching, to draw me ever nearer to the threshold of thy door. Now we're taking a step forward, to suffer me not to be far removed from the shelter of thy mercy and the canopy of thy bounty. Do you see how we're first saying, please don't cast me away, and then we're saying, please draw me nearer, and you're getting the image of the door, and you're actually asking to step across it, to come close to that threshold so that you can enter and not be far removed from the shadow of thy mercy and the canopy of thy mercy. Sorry, canopy of thy bounty. In the third one, we're asking by the splendor of thy luminous brow to attract me by the fragrance of thy raiment. Notice how the fragrance already anticipates the musk, which is going to come in the next verse. It's so interesting. All the senses are involved here, sight and sound and smell, and they're all mingling and drawing us closer to attract me by the fragrance of thy raiment. Make me to drink of the choice wine of thine utterance. I mean, it's even entering us here. We're asking to imbibe the wine of thine utterance. It's so beautiful. You notice this word utterance. Utterance is not just the words on the page. Utterance is when you utter them, when you chant them, when you give voice to them, when you hear your own voice saying those words. That's the utterance. And it's the choice wine of thine utterance. To listen to him is to become drunk on the music of his words. I beseech thee, O my God, he comes to the next one, by thy hair which moveth across thy face, so to raise me up to serve thy cause, that I shall not fall back nor be hindered. We need to just drop the image a little bit further, Jeremiah, so that we can see the words. Thank you. But so that we will not fall back, so that I shall not fall back nor be hindered. Now, this is again one of those, do this for me so that that will not happen to me. So to raise me up to serve, that I shall not fall back nor be hindered by the suggestions of them who have cavilled at thy signs and turned away from thy face. Notice how that phrase, by the suggestions of them, takes you back up to the very first one. Remember, we beseeched God in the very first stanza, by thy mighty sign. And we were asking in the third one, by the light brightness of the light of thy countenance. We're being reminded in this fourth one that I shall not fall back or be hindered by the suggestions of them that have cavilled at thy signs and turned away from thy face. So it's a really interesting progression here to come closer and closer. This is all about relative progress. It's almost as if he's in those first rungs of the ladder, he's preparing us to get higher and higher, because you can't jump from the bottom rung and reach the top immediately. You have to go step by step by step. And so he's taking us slowly, step by step, until we recognize that name, which is the King of names, and we come to the wine of thine utterance. Then we come to the next several stanzas on the second page. This is stanza 6. And before I go on too much further, I want to just um, just take a minute here to digress briefly and introduce you to a very beautiful article which appears in volume 9 of the Baha'i World. This is a little digression. We're just taking a pause from the prayer. Imagine that it's taking a long time for us to climb up those ladders. So we had to pause to take a breath here. And I'm taking you to this beautiful article written by Amatul Bahar Ruhiyya Khanum, which was published in 1940 in Baha'i World Volume 9. And you can find it on pages 797 to 797, between 794 to 797. And it was in Baha'i Volume 9, which covers the years 1940 to 1944, when Shoghi Effendi was effectively cut off from the Baha'i world by Second World War. In this volume, Ruhiyya Khanum writes about this same prayer that we are reading together, that we're analyzing together. And she imagines how Baha'u'llah would have been up in the mountains of Sargalu when he was revealing this prayer, and that he had seen many sunrises and many dawns as he stood high up in that cave in the mountains of Sulaymaniyeh. And when he was known as the hermit of Sargalu, and she imagines how he would have seen the world coming to life as the sun rose. And she sees this prayer as a depiction of that dawn that he is envisaging. And she believes, or suggests, if you like, that when he gets to this place in stanza 6, he is actually looking out from that mountainside and he is beginning to see the world coming to light in the light of the dawn. I beseech thee, O my God, by the tabernacle of thy majesty upon the loftiest summits and the canopy of thy revelation on the highest hills, to graciously aid me to do what thy will hath desired and thy purpose hath manifested. She imagines that canopy is opening up, like almost he's beginning to see the world awaken, and the canopy of the earth is becoming visible from the highest hills and from that lofty summit on which he is. And it's beginning to show the will of God, as it were. You're beginning to see, as you see the sunrise, you begin to understand, to graciously aid me, you're asking for the purpose of this particular verse, to graciously aid me to do what thy will hath desired and thy purpose hath manifested. It's becoming visible. Let me make it visible in my actions. And then when you come to the next stanza, I beseech thee, O my God, by thy beauty that shineth forth above the horizon of eternity, a beauty before which, as soon as it revealeth itself, the kingdom of beauty boweth down in worship, magnifying it in ringing tones. Let's just move from the yellow to the yellow for the next several stanzas there. So we come from the tabernacle on the loftiest summits and the canopy of thy revelation on the highest hills, to thy beauty, by thy beauty that shineth forth above the horizon of eternity. It's as if you're beginning to see the beginnings of that sunrise, according to Ruhiyya Khanum. And I found myself thinking that this was in itself a preparation, if you like, for Baha'u'llah's descent from the mountains of Sulaymaniyeh when he returns to Baghdad. And we know that in the 8th stanza there, I beseech thee, O my God, by the manifestation of thy name, he is going to manifest himself. So that beauty, which we have just become aware of, manifests itself in the Garden of Rezvan. So we go from the mountains of Suleymaniye, as it were, to the recognition of that beauty and its manifestation by thy name, the well-beloved, through whom the hearts of thy lovers were consumed, and the souls of all that dwell on earth have soared aloft. It's a really interesting reversal there, almost as if by being up on the mountainside, seeing the earth beginning to emerge, recognizing the shining of that beauty above the horizon of eternity, manifesting that beauty in his name, the well-beloved, and that causes the hearts to soar aloft. So you've got a return up almost to the mountain through the recognition of his lovers. And then when we go back to the blue of those sections, you'll see I've already mentioned the graciously aid me to do what thy will hath desired. And then we go to stanza 7, to grant that I may die to all that I possess and live to whatsoever belongeth unto thee. In each case, I am not repeating that wonderful incantatory statement, thou seest me, O my God, thou seest me, O my God. And each time in thy holding to thy name, the most holy, the most luminous, the most mighty, the most great, the most exalted, the most glorious. I had the great privilege, here's another little digression, at the age of 15 of having my first fast take place in the presence and company and through the immense compassion and goodness of Marian Hoffman, who came barreling down to the school where her daughter and I were locked away in the Welsh mountains for our boarding school years. And she got permission from the headmistress to take us out for these precious 19 days and say the fast and hold the fast for the first time in my life. I had the fast with her, and she used to get us up very, very early in the morning because, bless her, she had us read the very long prayers, each one of us. And so, and so it wasn't just one prayer we read, but 3 or 4 long prayers. And then she would give us an enormous meal that would begin with, smoked haddock and porridge and end with a date, which she used to say will stick in our ribs. After 3 days, I couldn't eat another morsel, and I ended up actually fasting completely in order to digest 3 days previous of food. Anyway, one of the things she did, which always stuck with me, was whenever she said this prayer, she would say the most holy, the most luminous, the most mighty, the most great, the most exalted, the most glorious. She would change the way she said it. Sometimes she would say it as I just said it, all as one. Sometimes she would say it in twos, most holy and most luminous, most mighty, most great, most exalted, most glorious. Sometimes she'd say it in threes, like triplets, like triplicates, like triads. The most holy, most luminous, the most mighty, the most great, the most exalted, the most glorious. And it created the most extraordinary sort of variation on a theme. I come back to the idea of music. There was so much a sense of music in the way she taught me to say this prayer. So I have not been repeating that. I have just been looking at the yellow and now looking again at the blue in that last stanza where we have the manifestation, by the manifestation of thy name, the well-beloved, through whom the hearts of thy lovers were consumed, and the souls of all that dwell on earth have soared aloft to aid me, to remember thee amongst thy creatures, and to extol thee amidst thy people. When we come to the next few stanzas, I beseech thee by the rustling of the divine lote tree, by that letter which as soon as it proceeded out of the mouth of thy will hath caused the oceans to surge and the winds to blow and the fruits to be revealed and the trees to spring forth. It's as if Baha'u'llah in these next few stanzas is not just showing us the growing, the visibility of the valley below us, if you like, but actually in detail, all of creation. And we're hearing it, and we're hearing in the murmur of the breezes. Again, it's in the of thine utterance in the kingdom of thy names. We're hearing his words. We're hearing the words of God being echoed in the rustling of the leaves of his revelation, in the murmur of the breezes of the in the utterance of thy kingdom of thy names. And in the next stanza, number 10, by that letter, we are beginning to hear it in the oceans that surge, the winds to blow, the fruits to be revealed, the tree. I mean, he's giving us all of creation seems to be coming alive as this day is dawning. Now, what Ruhi Chonim beautifully says is that she believes that in this prayer, she says, it is as if the worshipper approaches the sun, or rather sees the sun rise, while the sun is approaching the dawn, the daybreak. We're approaching the revelation, we're approaching the understanding of the meaning of the words at the same time as the sun is rising. And the sun of the revelation of Baha'u'llah is in the process of rising. When one remembers, these are her words, that the sun, the life giver of the earth, has ever been associated with God power, and that Baha'u'llah has always used it in his metaphors to symbolize the prophet, the prayer takes on a mystical significance that delights and inspires the soul. Because that's truly what one begins to feel as you go on through these verses. You get the impression that you're actually beginning to see, by the light of that sun that rose on the horizon of his utterance, you're beginning to see the world around you. You're beginning to understand the revelation of God and also his creation. And Ruhi Chonim even took it further a little later in her beautiful compilation of some of her most favorite prayers, which she called The Desire of the World, which she published in 1980. She pushes this symbol even further, and she says, if one begins, she means begins to say the prayer, at about 5 minutes before sunrise, one discovers that it seems deliberately to be synchronized with the rising of the sun. Well, of course, she had the blessing of saying this prayer at the World Center and in the vicinity of the shrines in the Middle East. And so the sunrise had a particular length of time. I don't know whether that would hold true in Finland, but at any rate, she actually tried it out. And from the beginning of the prayer to the end, she was able to gauge the length of time it took for the sun to rise above the horizon. And even, interestingly enough, in that last verse that I was reading, number 10 on that page, notice that even while everything is becoming visible, and not only the trees and the oceans and the winds and the fruits, but all past traces to vanish, and all the veils to be rent asunder, which is indeed what happens when the light begins to spill over the mountain and fill the valley. And them who are devoted to thee, to hasten unto the light of the countenance of their Lord, the unconstrained. What are we asking for in this verse? To make known unto me what lay hid in the treasuries of thy knowledge and concealed within the repositories of thy wisdom. How mysterious it is that just as everything becomes visible, we're begging for, beseeching for, imploring God for what is invisible, what is unseen, what lay hid in the treasuries of thy knowledge, all the secrets concealed within the repositories of thy wisdom. Now we come to stanza 11 and 12, and here we go from to make known unto me, to make known unto me, When we come to the yellow, by the fire of thy love, which drove sleep from the eyes of thy chosen ones, we all know that light immediately wakes you up. So even if you are a laggard and you don't have the alarm on and you oversleep during the fast, it's that terrible moment when you open your eyes and you think, oh my goodness, I missed it. It's already dawn and the light has come and I've woken up. It's the fire of love of thy love, he says, which should drive sleep from the eyes of thy chosen ones, not just the light. But at this point in the prayer, it is actually the light that has dawned and is spilling over into the valley. By the fire of thy love, which drove sleep from the eyes of thy chosen ones and thy loved ones, and by their remembrance and praise of thee at the hour of dawn. Do you remember he has already asked that we remember, what was it? To remove me far from what thy will and draw me nigh unto the station. We've already in number 8, we've asked to aid me to remember thee among thy creatures. From 8, if you look, you see on 11, the grounds of the beseeching are by the fire of thy love which drove sleep, and by their remembrance and praise of thee at the hour of dawn. So your remembrance is being joined by a whole chorus of souls, of his lovers, whom the fire of his love has driven sleep away from their eyes. And these chosen ones and these loved ones, it's their remembrance and praise that are joining your remembrance and praise. So it's almost as if the air around you is being filled with the voices of others besides yourself. And in this one, you're asking what the object of the stanza is: to remember me with such as have attained unto that which thou hast sent down in thy book and manifested through thy will. To number me. Now just jump to the next one. Just notice how it goes from to number me. And if we look at number 12, he's asking to write down for me with thy most exalted pen. So we're not just going from being numbered. We want to have it written down. We want it witnessed in words, to write down for me what thou hast written for thy trusted ones and thy chosen ones. So we are asking to be among those whose chorus we're listening to. That number 12, the beseeching, the grounds of the beseeching, is really the moment where at this point, the sun is practically up above the horizon. By the light of thy countenance, which impelled them who are nigh unto thee to meet the darts of thy decree, and such as are devoted to thee, to face the swords of thine enemies. Do you notice how the grounds of the beseeching in 11 and 12, we move from the fire of love which drove sleep, and by their remembrance and praise, to by the light of thy countenance, which impelled them to meet the darts of thy decree. So we're moving from just awakening, from not being asleep, to actually offering ourselves to the darts of thy decree. We're remembering the sacrifice of those who are nigh unto, those who are close to him, to meet the darts, and such as are devoted to thee, to face the swords of thine enemies. The grounds of our beseeching is by their sacrifice. That's the grounds on which we beseech. I hope I'm not tiring you out, because we've come to the most important one of all. We've come to number 13, which is the penultimate verse before the end. And in this one, suddenly something flips, something changes. Baha'u'llah takes us completely by surprise. You know, one of the classic techniques of storytelling, I'm bringing this all the way down the ladder, beyond ladders, down to the dust of storytelling here, is to set up an expectation and then change it. All our greatest stories set up expectations that we have that something's going to happen. And then at the critical moment, there's a surprise. And this happens in early childhood rhymes where the repetition suddenly changes, and the child gets the delight of having something change, and yet it's familiar. And in this case, the familiar is there. I beseech thee, O my God. It's still there. Remember, we've said, I beseech thee 13 times up to this point. I beseech thee, O my God. And we are still in the same sense of by thy, and we know that it's going to happen. By the way, I noticed that by thy name happens 3 times in this prayer. It's in stanza 5, by thy name, which is the King of names. It happens in stanza 8, by the manifestation of thy name, the well-beloved. And here it happens by thy name through which. And now we have this quite amazing catalogue of the powers that are induced by this name, thy name through which thou hast hearkened, through which thou hast fulfilled the wishes, through which thou hast granted their desires, through which the ocean of forgiveness surged, through which the clouds of generosity rained. But we have to read this all the way through, because the accumulation of what this name is doing is what is preparing us for the extraordinary end. I beseech thee, O my God, by thy name through which thou hast hearkened unto the call of thy lovers, and the sighs of them that long for thee, and the cry of them that enjoy near access to thee, and the groaning of them that are devoted to thee, and through which thou hast fulfilled the wishes of them that have set their hopes on thee, and hast granted them their desires through thy grace and thy favours. And by thy name, through which the ocean of forgiveness surged before thy face, and the clouds of thy generosity rained upon thy servants, to write down for everyone who hath turned unto thee and observed the fast prescribed by thee. We'll stop there a minute. Just before that, it was to write down for me. Now we go to everyone. Do you see how this prayer is just opening and becoming more and more inclusive, more and more of an embrace of the world? It's as the light shines more brightly, we see more, we understand more, and the world is being enveloped in this extraordinary appeal of beseeching, by thy name, I beseech thee, by thy name. Now we come to the extraordinary surprise that Baha'u'llah gives us here. Because instead of thou seest me, O my God, we get something completely different. Here I'm going to do another digression. You know, in the short obligatory prayer, I bear witness, O my God, to my powerlessness and to thy might, to my poverty and to thy wealth. I bear witness to my condition. In this prayer, the whole concept of being a witness is turned on its head. And for 13 times or 12 times up until now, we have heard, thou seest me, O my God. We're asking God to bear witness to us. This is really quite extraordinary, because that prayer, the obligatory prayer, is of course obligatory for a very important reason. And here he's giving us a chance to completely turn it round. My digression goes a bit further. Please bear with me, because we will not understand these remarkable words that come highlighted in green. I hope you can see it, because when I printed this out, it was practically indecipherable. So I have to look on the screen for this. Here, I will read these words, and then I will digress with your permission. To write down for everyone who hath turned unto thee and observed the fast prescribed by thee, the recompense decreed, for such as speak not except by thy leave, and who forsook all that they possessed in thy path, and for love of thee. Well, first of all, we're not sideways because we don't have thou seest me, O my God, holding to thy name, the most holy, the most luminous, the most mighty. We have something completely different. And the first thing, I mean, when you're not actually praying, when you're still thinking about the ladder and the number of rungs, and you're almost on the last rung here, you read what? You almost fall off the ladder. You don't read, thou seest me. You read the recompense decreed. What is the recompense decreed? For such as speak not except by thy leave? Who are they? All right. Kitab Aqdas. Kitab Aqdas, paragraph 42. Are you ready for this? Because this was actually one of my father's most favorite paragraphs, and he must have repeated this so many times that anyone who ever heard him give any speech at all must know this paragraph off by heart. Paragraph 42 is the paragraph regarding endowments. Have I talked too long? Yes, I have, haven't I? Is it 5 o'clock? I should stop. Can I just finish with this one recompense decreed?
You're fine. Please continue.
I'm sorry, I've talked too long. I thought it would
No,
be too
no, no,
short.
please
It's too long.
continue.
Okay, in the paragraph 42, which is about the endowments dedicated to charity, Baha'u'llah says that these endowments revert to God, the revealer of signs. And he then goes on and says, none hath the right to dispose of them without leave from him who is the dawning place of the revelation, which means the manifestation of God. In other words, the huququllah, or the endowments which are given to the cause, the only one who can dispose of them during the lifetime of the manifestation is the manifestation himself, him who is the dawning place of the revelation. Paragraph 42 goes on. After him, that is after his passing, this authority shall pass to the Aqsan. And as my dear father would repeatedly say, Aqsan, you will notice, is plural because Ghusn is the singular version of that word. That means more than one. So after the passing of the manifestation, it will go to those members of his lineage, his direct lineage, more than one, shall pass to the Aqsan. And we know that we had Abdul Baha, who was appointed by Baha'u'llah, who then appointed Shoghi Effendi, two, and after them to the House of Justice, should it be established in the world by then. Well, it wasn't established in the world in 1957. We know that. And in the note to this wonderful paragraph 42, which is note 67, the House of Justice says, Baha'u'llah provides for the possibility that the line of Aqsan would terminate prior to the establishment of the Universal House of Justice. He designated that in such a situation, endowments shall revert to the people of Baha, because paragraph 42 continues saying this, should it be established by then, that they may use these endowments for the benefit. Otherwise, paragraph 42 continues, the endowments shall revert to the people of Baha, who speak not except by his leave, and judge not save in accordance with what God hath decreed in this tablet. Lo, they are the champions of victory betwixt heaven and earth. And the House of Justice is, note continues with who by saying, following the passing of Shoghi Effendi in 1957, the hands of the cause of God directed the affairs of the cause until the election of the Universal House of Justice. So when I read those words, the recompense decreed for such as speak not except by thy leave, I hear the echo of those words of Baha'u'llah in the Kitab Aqdas, which is actually evoking the hands of the cause. And what immediately follows is, and who forsook all that they possessed in thy path. That was partly the pioneers that continued during the 10-year crusade to serve the goals of the house of the guardian, but also the martyrs who from the beginning of this revelation forsook all that they possessed in thy path and for love of thee. So we get this quite remarkable way that Baha'u'llah gives us this astonishing presumption that we are beseeching God by that name through which he hearkened and did all those things, to write down not only for us, but for everyone who has turned unto thee and observed the fast prescribed by thee, the recompense that is deserved by such as the hands of the cause, the martyrs of his faith, those who have served him faithfully. And we come to the last one. I beseech thee, and here he makes another change. It's no longer, oh my God, but oh my Lord. And by thyself, not only by thy name, by thyself and by thy signs and thy clear tokens and the shining light of the day star of thy beauty and thy branches. At this point, really, all we can say is that we've reached the top of the ladder. We see the sunrise. We've followed Ruhi Khanum and counted the minutes, and the sun is actually up there. And now from the top of the ladder, we can take this prayer and not only analyze it and look at the structure of that rising sun and the revelation of the world as well as his faith, but also what it means to truly pray and intone these verses as intoned by them who have drawn nigh unto him, that the sweetness of thy melody may kindle thine own soul and attract the hearts of all men. If we read this prayer in the privacy of our chambers, God willing, these verses revealed by God, the scattering angels of the Almighty shall scatter abroad the fragrance of the words uttered by our mouths. So we come to the end, and I wish you well for the last days of this blessed fast. May you cling to that precious cord and the hem of that robe to which have clung all. When you cling, you will recognize that you're not clinging alone. You are accompanied by the clinging of all those who have ever said these words and all those who have loved this faith. Between now and eternity, we're in that company. Thank you so much, and forgive my talking for so long.
It was a very beautiful melody. We all really appreciate it. This wonderful prayer and all the time that was taken to go over this. All of you who have joined in this session to deepen in this beautiful prayer of the fast and to take this method when we study the prayers to other prayers, to deepen in the meaning of the prayers, to grow this connection with our beloved, with our God. With that being said, I find it a very appropriate place for us to wish everyone, as this is the 16th of March, we are getting near to Nowruz on the 20th, to wish everyone in these final days of the fast days full of not just reflection, but gratitude for this wonderful law that God has given us. There's nothing more to be said than to read the writings and what the writings tell us about the fast. And furthermore, the beautiful words that are in the prayer, invoked in the morning and evening when we say them. With that having been said, we wish all of you here, especially Miss Bahia Nakjavani, for her time, having come and spoken on this beautiful, very beautiful prayer. And not just that, allowing us a glimpse of a way to study these prayers so that not only are they something we merely say, but something that are carried in our minds, in our hearts, and hopefully memorized so we can say them always through eternity. Thank you very much again. Good evening to everyone, and more importantly, good afternoon to those of you here in Clearwater.